Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a Fifth Doctor story. It's Four To Doomsday. As always, for any classic Doctor Who story review, I have with me the television companion. Let's see what the plot synopsis is for Four To Doomsday. The TARDIS arrives on board a huge spaceship where the Doctor and his companions encounter the frog-like Obankans and a population of human androids. The androids are drawn from 4 different ethnic groups: Greek, led by Biggin; Chinese, led by Lin Futu; Mayan, led by Villagra; and Aboriginal Australian, led by Kikuchi, and perform regular displays of dance and other rituals termed recreationals. The Obankan's leader, Monarch, aided by his minister's persuasion and enlightenment, is engaged in a complex scheme to plunder from Earth the raw materials needed to enable him to travel back in time and therefore confirm his belief in his own status as the universe's divine creator. Monarch has a poison that he intends to use to conquer humanity so that Earth can be repopulated with his androids. The Doctor, however, throws a canister of the poison at Monarch, causing him to shrink away to virtually nothing. I reviewed Terence Dudley's Black Orchid as the last Peter Davison story. I now review the other story he wrote in season 19, Four To Doomsday, starring Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor and including the cast members of Janet Fielding as Tegan Jovanka, Sarah Sutton as Nyssa, and Matthew Waterhouse as Adric. I'm going to start this review with the cast members and the characters and go through each of them in turn. Well, the major ones anyway, as I usually do. We start off, of course, with the Doctor, Peter Davison. This is the very first story that he recorded as the Doctor, and I have to say the performance initially is a little bit uncertain, a little bit unsure, but by the end of it we're getting the character that we see in the Visitation and the more grumpy and frustrated character of the Fifth Doctor. And I quite like this early Fifth Doctor in some respects as well, because he's trying to gain some sort of control over his TARDIS group, because he's effectively a similar outlook and age to his companions. His companions are maybe a little bit younger, and I'll go into some of the dynamics that have been written for this story in a minute. But ultimately, he's still trying to find his feet, and it's pretty obvious he's trying to find his feet. It's a slight difference to the character that's built up in Castrovalva. It's probably because of the production order and the confidence that Peter Davison had in the role as he grew, which is why it's maybe not as a polished performance as the others. What he gets to read and what he gets to actually read and perform is fine. He nails the lines, but I don't think the character's quite 100% at this point, and you can tell it's one of the early recordings. Some actors with Doctor Who, when they start, they start off with hitting the ground running. Others kind of struggle a little bit, and it just depends on how the writing starts and how it all works out. And I think possibly this is one of these instances where the writing is not really helping the Doctor to be established as much as he could do. Nice little touches in there with the Doctor and his obvious frustrations with Adric running a bit amok, and Tegan fighting against him but showing her character of heart, which we'll get to in a minute, and the Doctor kind of railing against that a little bit. The dynamics are quite nice when it's one-on-one. As it's a whole group, it's a little bit different, and I'll come to that later. We then have Tegan, played by Janet Fielding. This is only the second story that Janet Fielding filmed, and you can tell there's a bit of uncertainty about the direction of the character. They're trying to keep the feistiness of Tegan in there, and Tegan's fight with the Doctor, and the way that she's railing against the fact the Doctor hasn't got back to Heathrow. That's a running theme for most of the season, really. And then we've got the situation of the Doctor and Tegan kind of bouncing off each other with some of the desires they have. Tegan seems to have the voice of reason in some of these things. She's a bit disgusted about the whole situation of Monarch and the way Bankans are dealing with these humans and with the humans, and how the whole Earth is going to be taken over by Monarch. She's disgusted. She wants to help. It's her forthrightness that gets her into trouble with the TARDIS being dematerialised from the spaceship into just outside, and that gives the Doctor this famous scene where he's using the cricket ball to give momentum to get to the TARDIS. I'll get to that as one of the set pieces later. So actually not bad, quite impressive. Overall, I think out of the four leads, Janet Fielding's closest to one of the best of the four leads in here, and the character of Tegan, this kind of brash but an argumentative Australian, really does work for this. I like the element that Tegan actually can speak Aborigine, because she spoke to Kikuchi in Aborigine, which is really interesting. I like that. I like that small element that's come out there from Janet Fielding's Tegan on this story. We then have Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton. Game of two halves for Nyssa in this one. First one, they're showing the elements of her intelligence, but she doesn't get much to do. She's kind of like a conscientious objector, showing her scientific skills and a very enthusiastic student, effectively. And then she becomes the femme fatale. She becomes the Perils of Pauline later on. She gets hypnotised a couple of times. She even collapses and faints at the end of the story. I don't think Sarah Sutton got a lot of meaty stuff to talk about there, and and it's a shame, because when Nyssa does get meaty stuff, it's a really good character and really fun, and I've seen that from the Big Finish stuff and obviously the TV series as well. The Visitation is one of the best examples of Nyssa doing stuff in the TV series, so it's nice to actually have that contrast. But here she's underused. She is probably the one that doesn't have the most development of the four of the companions, and it's a disappointment really for that. The one that has annoyed me, but the one who seems to be like the big, I'm gonna fight you, I'm the big opinionated one, is Adric. He's like the little brother who has the ideas and everybody scoffs at him. He's very much a teenager in his outlook and the way he does things. Matthew Waterhouse does well with what he gets. It's gratingly annoying, and it just doesn't quite fit for me the way Matthew Waterhouse acts it. He's always had that kind of issue in some respects. It's difficult to get round it and look at it in any other way. Adric's certainly the one you want to hate. He's the one they're trying to develop character a bit more for here. And his pomposity at the beginning about the fact that all girls aren't intelligent enough to understand the TARDIS is rather pompous. But rather part of the character, I suppose, is probably the best way of putting it. We then have the three main guest leads. We have Monarch, played by Stratford Johns. This kind of all-knowing, all-seeing, quite arrogant, narcissistic character in Monarch. I quite like it. He's quite a slimy frog, literally a slimy frog, and I think it works quite well. I do quite like the way Monarch works, and it's a nice little twist at the end that you realise that Monarch actually is part organic. He's not completely synthetic like Persuasion and Enlightenment are. It's a good turn. It's an enjoyable villain. He definitely is the big bad of the story, and he gets his comeuppance really, and well-deserved comeuppance as far as I'm concerned. But that's my opinion really. We then have Persuasion, played by Paul Shelley. He's supposed to be the henchman, and he's supposed to be the one that persuades people to help, to come to their point of view, because Monarch's idea is to try and persuade people that he's here to improve their lives when they're ultimately killing them. Sounds a bit political. I think it's one of these interesting roles. Paul Shelley does well with what he's got, but there's something missing with Persuasion. I'm not quite sure what it is, but Persuasion doesn't seem to have. I think it's maybe the way it's written. It's not quite nailing it for me in regards to his what he's supposed to be. He's obviously the henchman, but he's obviously the one that kind of does the Monarch's bidding without any question, and it's a bit of a boring henchman in that respect. And he doesn't, you're kind of glad when he gets deactivated in this full story. You don't really bothered about his fate being too bad or too good. You're just happy he's gone and out the way, because he becomes a bit of a nuisance near the end. You've then got Enlightenment, played by Annie Lambert. This is a decent role that she plays here. It's interesting, Enlightenment seems to be the one that has a bit more to her in regards to questioning Monarch and being the one that's a slight thorn in Monarch's side, because she's trying to have slight independent thought from Monarch, which he doesn't like. He prefers conformity. And I actually prefer Enlightenment to Persuasion of the two supporting members of the Urbankans there. And I think Annie Lambert does a very good job with what she gets. I quite like the way it's played, and I quite like the way the Enlightenment comes across. She's the one that you kind of could be enticed with and actually, be the one that you could be persuaded by. She's a better persuasion than persuasion, as far as I'm concerned, and I think the performance by Annie Lambert helps that. We then have Biggin, played by Philip Locke. Now, I love the way he's portrayed it as kind of like a slightly emotionless android, and that kind of otherworldliness he plays of this Greek philosopher who tends and happens to be a bit more than he seems, and he understands the Doctor could be there to help them stop destroying Earth, all the androids, and he is one of the main catalysts of the story of moving along, and the Doctor going through all the different rooms. It's an interesting character played, and it's played very well by Philip Locke. I think it's one of the better guest casts as well, and it is enjoyable to see. Villagra by Nadia Haman doesn't really do much. She's there as the Mayan leader and doesn't really get much in there, so I can't say much about her. Kikuchi is the same, played by Hilario Bisi Pedro, so again I can't really say much. Burt Kwok is actually interesting. Funnily enough, this is the second time Burt Kwok's been mentioned in a Doctor Who review in the past 3 reviews. He was in Lougarou as I reviewed the Big Finish audio review last month, as the Hayashi. And this time he's playing the generic Chinese leader, Lin Futu, who has his own ulterior motives at heart and is a bit loyal to Monarch, but when he realises that his existence is under threat, he's quite happy to come across, and he's an interesting little character. I think that's quite fun overall, and it's not badly played either. So there are some interesting bits of this. I think the dynamic of the 4 leads doesn't quite work. It's one of these early examples of how not to split up the teams. You put Adric and Nyssa together. Adric's annoying and pompous. Nyssa's like the big sister telling him off, and you can't really have them in scenes together for too long. Tegan and the Doctor work better because they're good contrasts between each other. Tegan can be very abrasive, but there's obviously a caring side there which we see, and I think Janet Fielding and Peter Davison really have a good rapport here. He has a good rapport with all of them, including Matthew Waterhouse, but I think the rapport is the best, and the best characterisation between Tegan and the Doctor is here, or the best characterisation in the story is Tegan and the Doctor. I think that works fairly well. It's interesting how the TARDIS scenes, it's like they're trying to find the footing and nobody knows what the hell they're going to do with these 4 companions, and Eric Saywood probably is the first one that properly splits them up and does things with them that works when he does the visitation. Up to this point, I think they're trying to find their feet a little bit, and they realise that maybe they have to knock out a companion, which is what they do in Kinder, the next story, and of course they do in Earthshock later in the series, and they realise that maybe a crowded TARDIS is too crowded. Maybe they need only 2 companions, not 3. And the 2 companion rules tends to work better in Doctor Who. I've noticed in the Peter Davison era particularly, it tends to work better. So I think they realised very quickly that 4 in the TARDIS is not as good as 3. And the best 4 pairing, I think, in the TARDIS was actually Barbara, Ian, Vicky and the Doctor. I think that was the best 4 TARDIS pairing. But 1 companion to the Doctor or 2 companions to the Doctor tends to be a decent way of doing the TARDIS team. And this experiment of trying to get the 4 and have a kind of mini interlinked of the cliffhanger of one story into the next is very evocative of Hartnell's era. It's a bit weird, this one, at the end, but it's okay. I mean, the concept of this Orbankan ship coming back and cycling back 4 times, so hence the title Four To Doomsday. So the first one's 12,500 years ago, then it's 8,000, then it's 4,000, now it's now, and then 2,000. So it's an interesting mix between everybody and how it's all been put together, and how Monarch wants to increase technology so he can go back to speed of light. It's not a Christopher H. Bidmead type thing. It's a very Doctor Who sciencey fantasy thing, and it's a nice little concept for Doctor Who. It certainly works better than Logopolis, the story of the year before, or the Leisure Hive in regards to its science fiction elements. It's actually more traditional science fiction, and the concept is fairly simple and easy to go through. It's not a bad story for that concept, really. When it comes to the direction by John Black, it's very standard. I like the Monopticons, or Monopticams as I call them. I think they're a nice little addition, nice little effects you have there. There's practical and there's also a little bit of blue screen with some of them as well, which is really nice to see, or CSO as they would call it in the BBC at that time. It's nice to see that, and I think that's a nice little practical effect. I think direction overall, it's not too overlit. It's a good reuse of the same set, the same couple of sets, because they've just redressed the set multiple times with different parts of the spaceship. It's always good having a spaceship in that respect, because you can redress stuff, which is really interesting. But overall, I think it's not a bad little direction. It's well paced. The story's okay to work with, and it does keep your interest just about. It's interesting in that respect. The writing is fine. Overall, for what it is, I think it's a little basic. In regard, the plot line is okay. The characterization's a little basic. I think maybe they could have done with maybe one or less, slightly less characters in there. Maybe taken out persuasion and just left enlightenment might have helped better with the functionalities of the Orbankins, and given a bit more time to other characters to develop. I think it's an interesting concept, but I think maybe there's a few too many people in this ensemble cast that have prominent roles, and maybe one or less would have been better potentially. We have the music by Roger Lim. It's very much his synth stabs. Roger Lim's very good at just having kind of little leitmotifs that go between the action. He doesn't do much of an atmospheric musical score like Peter Howell or Paddy Kingsland does in this era. He's very much stabs and leitmotifs and just things to punctuate what's happening on the screen. Very much close to, do you know what? It works. It kind of highlights what you need to highlight in here and gives a very nice 80s vibe to Doctor Who. And Roger Lim's quite good with what he gets, but it's nothing spectacular. But yeah, overall, it's not take your brain out, but it's not something I would go back to on a regular basis. It's a story that's enjoyable, but it's not highly rated. It's kind of middling for me, and for that, I would give Four To Doomsday 3 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Peter Davison era, and also how it stacks up with the rest of the TV stories I've reviewed so far. So, we've now reviewed 7 stories of the Peter Davison era. Four To Doomsday joins Arc of Infinity with 3 TARDISes out of 5, and Case of Androzani is at the top with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. Case of Androzani is one of 7 stories overall that have 4.5 TARDISes out of 5 so far. The other 6 are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Dalek, and The End of Time. At the bottom is still Timelash and Sleep No More with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. That's it for this Doctor Who review. Tell me what you think about Four To Doomsday. Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, please like it, share it with the hashtag teamstructor. If you like the channel as a whole, please hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. So thanks guys very much for watching this Doctor Who review once again. I am back next Sunday at 4 PM GMT, which is the general rule for video releases, with the big finish audio of Dust Breeding. Until then guys, thanks so much for watching, and do you know what? I'll see you later.